Hi, welcome, Calvin.
Thank you.
Yeah,
I'm excited to be here, Leslie.
yeah, I'm so excited to hear your story. I know a little bit about you, but I'm ready to hear your experience. So let's dive in.
Hmm.
And what was your spiritual life like growing up? Was it religious? What was your experience of it, or your thoughts about it growing up?
Hmm. Uh, I love it. We're just like getting into the deep end right away.
Absolutely.
uh, so growing up, I grew up, I guess when I was born, my parents were Buddhist, right? And I don't think it was Buddhist in any sort of meaningful philosophical way. It was like a cultural vestige, so to speak, right? So we'd go to the temple, we'd light the incense. There was some superstition that there's some superstitious stories to tell, and that was kind of about it. We learned some of the mythology. We didn't really read any of the text or anything like that, So that was the environment that I was born into. Um, my parents are from Vietnam. I was born here in America, so I grew up here in America. Um, Around 8 or 9, my parents enrolled my sister and I into a Chinese school, and it was offered through a local church. And so we came home one day singing Jesus songs. And Jesus loves me, this I know. And my parents like, whoa, 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 hold, stop. And there's like, no, that doesn't happen in this house. And we're like, why? But Jesus loves me, because that's where it's all like, we're kids, so that's just all we're being taught. So then fast forward a couple years, my mom starts working at a Christian organization, and she comes home with a Bible, and she starts becoming curious more about Christianity, because she's like, these people are really nice. They sit around, they just pray during lunch, and they donate stuff. Like, that's just really nice. It's just that gets her curiosity. Of course, my dad wasn't exposed to it at all. Like, he just sees this happening with my mom, and then she starts going to church. And so at first he's making fun of it. And then, like as time goes on, he's like more opposing it now. Around that time, my youngest sister was born, and she starts going to a Christian preschool. It was a really good preschool. So then, God's got like 2 of them now, like they're starting to surround my dad.
But wait a minute,
Me,
but what was
yeah,
yours? So you had this like kind of Buddhist upbringing, but you didn't, the way you
yeah.
describe it, you weren't very attached to it, or were you?
I really wasn't, like we started to be exposed to it, and my parents said, no, no. And so I'm like, all right, that's cool. And that was really it, for me. I did have some experiences that I remember when I was 3 years old. I'd be looking at people, like my mom, like I'd be looking at people in the eyes, and just, it was like this confusion, like, how come I can't feel what you're feeling? How come I don't know what you're thinking exactly? Because we're kind of the same stuff, right? So
Mm.
like there was like this kind of curiosity that I think was kind of weird for a 3-year-old. Um, yeah, but like, I didn't know what to do with that.
But that was never
you know,
that was never addressed. You didn't have a conversation
no,
around it. It was just thoughts that you were having
yeah,
that didn't kind of
yeah,
go anywhere. And so then you started
exactly.
the Christian school, and you liked the songs, but then were told not
Like
to.
the songs.
Did you get attached to Christianity at the time, or did it just not?
No, I mean, it was kind of like a Santa Claus story to me.
Mm,
I guess looking back, it was just kind of like, oh, cool, like this guy likes me, and like he's like magic or something, right?
yeah.
But no, I didn't get too attached to it. And then growing up, my dad, uh, yeah, I mean, I was pretty strongly left brain growing up, math and science, Chinese kid growing up in America. So it's like math and science and stuff, and so like I was pretty, like logical, and uh, it was like, well, logically that doesn't make any sense. Whatever, we just kind of moved along,
Hmm.
right? And so I think really my spiritual life didn't begin until when I went to college. When I was in college, I laughed because I was a pretty emotional kid growing up. You know, like it was a tense home that I grew up in emotionally.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of not very much emotional intelligence, I would say. Not even a lot of emotional safety, I would say. So pretty emo. You know,
Mm-hmm.
like depressed, overwhelmed. And when that got to when we got to when I got to college, I took over the beating up of myself. I took over that role. You know,
Mm-hmm.
so I put a lot of pressure on myself. And so I started smoking a lot of weed in college. And I think it saved my life.
Yeah.
But we don't need to go down that rabbit hole. But it taught me to chill out, you
Yeah.
know. And it kind of opened my mind up in a way where it depressed me, but then it kind of like chilled me out at the same time. Like I started to really question my reality. And I guess that's how it really started. I started to question my reality. I was like, wait, hold on. I have 5 senses. There are other organisms that have like 2 or 3.
Mm-hmm.
There's some organisms that have maybe 1, just like a sense of smell, right? Like how do I know that I don't have all the senses that are like possible to have? Right. So how do I know that this reality that I think I can see, touch, measure, and feel is like the extent of it, and really that's it? You know, like what if there's this bigger thing called God? And God was an interesting conversation to me because there's this girl that I really liked in high school that I finally started getting closer to in college. And just one day out of nowhere, she's like, I can't talk to you anymore because you're not Christian. Like she just got baptized out of nowhere. And I was like, I hate God.
I'm not getting what I want.
Yeah. I was like, I hate God. God, this is stupid, you know. But then, like, I was like, oh God, like I don't know how to reconcile this idea of God because on one hand, it doesn't make any damn sense, you know. But on the other hand, I can see how I don't know everything. It's not possible for me to know everything. So, like, how do I know that God doesn't exist? You know. And at that same time, my roommate in college was a very devout Christian. One night, we were pretty drunk. He had just got in an argument with his girlfriend, and before we were going to sleep, he was praying out loud, and he said something along the lines of, God, you know, like give me the strength to like be a better boyfriend and be a better man. Like I want to be a better boyfriend to his girlfriend and stuff. And I'm sitting over here, right, like scientific skeptic, and I'm looking at him. I'm like, wow, God doesn't even have to be real. But if he really thinks that God is real, and he thinks that God can really judge the sincerity of his heart, then it doesn't matter if God's real. He's going to become a better boyfriend no matter what, like because he really means it, and he knows that if he doesn't, then like he's going to go to hell or something, right? Like so like this idea of God was just really fascinating to me, but I was still kind of anti-God, just because I couldn't reconcile it. And
But were you
third year in
talking?
college.
But were you talking to anyone? Like, were you going to churches, or this is just like gathering information from the people around you, not necessarily going like questioning your family or questioning at a bigger way? This is just you sitting there in your room, kind of thinking about things, or maybe taking philosophy classes.
Yeah, not even taking philosophy classes, just logically like observing in the world around me, and then like playing with the puzzle pieces in the back of my own head, really. Yeah.
Okay.
And so, because I think at the time, like for where I was in my life at that, if I was talking to people, it would have turned into an argument. Like I would have made some sort of comment to make people feel stupid. I was really like that back then. I'm better about that now. You know, like yeah. And it's a volatile topic, right? But so that's kind of like, you know, that's like the presence of God, concept of God in my life. And you know, by the time third year in college came around, I remember just waking up one day, and you know, my sister got into the same college I did. It was like the first day of spring. It was just beautiful in San Diego. I just got an internship at NASA that I was really trying hard for, and some other cool things happened like all around the same time. And I woke up and I said, wow, life is good. And as soon as I said life is good, Leslie, I was like, wait, hold on. Who said that? because I've never said life is good. Like that just wasn't me. Life was hard. Life is a fight. Life is a bitch. Life is a trick. You know, like that was me right there. So life was good. Was like, it just didn't, it was like a crack in the shell, you know, and I was just kind of, I remember I wrote in my blog back then, I was like, you know, like, is there such a thing as God? Like, I remember asking that, like, is there such, I don't know, like, because this is so weird. This is a new idea to me. And so, I interned at NASA Johnson Space Center in Houston. Driving out there, I almost got into 2 fatal car accidents, but I like narrowly escaped that. And it was just like a faint thought in the back of my head, like, is God looking after me? Whatever. That's a weird idea. And I just kind of left it. And when I get there, the family that hosts me are devout Christians, and the other intern from Pennsylvania, Lancaster, Pennsylvania, was also very devout Christian too. And so then the conversation started, you know, and I was like, hey, what if God is just a psychological construct? Like, what if God was just this, what if God didn't create us? Like, we created God, right? And he's like this way for us to guilt trip ourselves into becoming better. You know,
these were conversations you were having, but not in the, I want to evoke a reaction, more in an honest
like,
inquiry.
I was genuinely curious.
Yeah. Lovely.
Yeah. And they're like, well, that's humanism, or they offered me their explanation. They're like, you know what? Just come to church with us. You know, they gave me a great book to read by C.S. Lewis. It was Mere Christianity. That was a great book. You know, really, I was like, okay. So I started going to church with them, and you know, like one thing that was always really powerful to me was hearing worship music. I think for the first maybe 4 or 5 years of like being in that world, worship music always just was able to touch some sort of wound inside me, and I just started crying. And like that was really powerful. Like it was a catharsis. It was just powerful for me, you know. And I came back, you know, saying I'm a Christian. I came back like, you know, like praying, and it was because it touched me, you know, like and you know, like nowadays I'm not Christian. I don't identify as Christian now, but what I'm able to look back and see now that was so powerful about that, that I think I would be willing to identify as Christian, or like I see. Well, hold on. What I took from that was, you know, of all the things that I had studied, like Buddhism and all these different philosophies, science, physics, and all that, there was kind of like knowing the properties of God. It's kind of like knowing God, like knowing the properties, knowing of God, let's say. But then Jesus was like, well, that's cool. Like you can know karma and blah 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 and all that, but why don't you just have a relationship with me? Why don't you just have a relationship with the unknown? Why don't you just have a relationship with, you know, like the thing that you're trying to study, rather than just like studying it and understanding the properties of it? And it was like, I think that was like the moment that like spirituality came into my heart, and it wasn't just like this adventure in like of the head, you know?
So you started to feel something.
Yeah.
Right. And it started with the worship. So you were still all like in your head, but the worship was able to get you to have a physical experience and a feeling experience. And I mean, that's one of the things I think about is it feels like truth, right? When I have a conversation with someone, or when I read a teaching, it feels like truth to me. And that's a hard thing to describe, but it is what it is. And I know that other teachings don't work for me, but they work for others, where it just feels like truth. I mean, how does that sound to you? Because it's like a combination of the head and the heart to me. It's like I have a thought, or I hear a teaching, or I hear something, and then there's an experience of, I may be able to poke holes in it logically, right? But I also know that my experience, my whole experience of it feels like truth.
Yeah.
Does that ring true for you?
it feels like truth.
Mm.
I almost said, I think it's, hmm, may, hmm, hmm, it feels like truth. Maybe more like it feels like home, or it just like feels right. You know, like because there are many times where in my relationship with my wife, and she wasn't always my wife, you know, like she was my girlfriend and fiance, like there'd be many times where we're arguing about something, or like we have a difference of opinion, and you know, like I'm just so right.
Yeah. Oh man.
I'm just so right, you know? And then she'll say, but whatever, and she just like expresses like where she's coming from, and then like there's just something that clicks, and my heart opens. I'm like, wow, like that feels, it feels like love, like it feels like home. To say, okay, you know what, like I might be right, but that doesn't, it doesn't make sense to be right here, almost in that way, because like there's something bigger than just being right, or there's something bigger than just like what I'm able to logically see or deduce, you know?
Yeah, that's a beautiful way of putting it. I can, I was very left brain. I like that. I like to logic things out. And sometimes at the end of the day, it's the greater good. And at the end of the day, I can get to this place if I think too long about this spiritual stuff and I get too invested in these things. And then I finally have to surrender to this idea that I don't know everything, A.
Mm-hmm.
And at the end of my life, this way of being and thinking brings me more joy. So and so I just get to surrender that I'm never going to be able to wrap with my human brain. I'm never going to be able to wrap my entire head around the how and the why the Holocaust, why the death, why the pain, right? All of these places where I get stuck around a spiritual life. And then I just do what you just said, which is relax into, okay, I surrender it. I'm just going to have faith for the greater good.
Yeah. Yeah. Like I've, one of the questions that I still don't necessarily know how to answer, and it seems like a really basic question, I mean, for having this episode being recorded in this conversation, right? It's like, what is spirituality exactly even, and it seems like, like probably one of my best guesses is like your relationship with like the thing that's bigger than you, or like your relationship with the thing that's like bigger than what you're able to see. Like it includes the dark side of the moon, which like that side of the moon is there, you're not able to see it, but like what's your relationship with that? Right? Like, are you able to make space for that? Are you able to have compassion? Are you able to have relationship? Are you able to like want good for that part too, even though you don't really know what that part is? Maybe that's what spirituality is. I don't know, but there's something about my relationship with the unknown and being willing to trust that. I think is what I'm, I think, evolving into seeing it as.
Well, what we're discussing, and I think a lot of people have that dialogue, right? And it's this idea that I have a mind and I have a body, and there's something else. I have a spirit. I have a spirit that feels connected to my husband, that feels connected to my son, that feels connected to you, that feels connected. It's something other than my mind. It's not about thoughts that I have. It's not an emotion, right? Like, and so there's something that's, I talk about this all the time in this podcast, but the idea of three blind men and the elephant, right? At any given day, I could be holding onto the tail or holding onto the trunk or wrapping my head around the foot. and knowing this is true. This is spiritual life. I'll describe it to you in detail, but that's just the one part of it, right? And so that's how I see this spiritual life. Like, what is it for you today? And that's just the piece you're looking at today in the space, from the space that you are, and tomorrow it'll shift and change. And how does that sound for you?
Well, yeah, I mean, like the blind man and the elephant is basically the story that I kind of use to illustrate, what is God? God is the elephant, and I'd rather not try to say what God is, but then like here's what I think it is, but then I want to be that blind man that's like, hey, you swear it's a wall, I swear it's a tree trunk, let me Marco Polo my way over there, and hey, yeah, you're right, that is the kind of wall. Come over here, isn't this like a tree trunk? It's really weird, right? Let's go to that guy that says spear, let's go to that guy that says rope, and then kind of, we're just like, wow, like, we're in the presence of something bigger right here, like I think that really feels spot on. Ken Wilber, familiar, right? Mr. Integral, really influenced the way that I see spirituality. He said that no one's dumb enough to get it 100% wrong. No one's smart enough to get it 100% right. And so it's just like, how do we put these pieces together right here? There's one mountaintop. There's many ways to get to that top of the mountain, right? And so, I mean, and so, yeah.
It's just
I
in
forgot
the
where
seeking.
I was going with that, but yeah, spot on.
It's just in the seeking. I mean, that's my opinion about it. As long as I'm seeking, that's all I need, and that's the job. And that sometimes can feel unsatisfying, but that's just the job, right? The job is to show up and meditate and spend time and question and come back to self and try and, be a better person and all of that, right? Be more connected. So tell me how.
I can see that it's in the seeking.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can really see that. Like maybe like, so, I mean, so if like there were like, if God were actually like a being, right? Like how smart of God to be like, all right, I'm going to just create this mystery and they're going to have to figure it out. But then in figuring it out, they're really going to have to be kind to each other and not seeing the worst in each other, and like learn how to play nice to each other so that they can figure out the other stuff from each other. They have the puzzle pieces that they need from each other.
Yeah. There you go.
Yeah, no, that's really cool. It's not about having the right puzzle piece. Everyone has the right puzzle piece, but then you got to put it together.
Yeah, and we're built to be in community. We're built to be in community. Yeah. We are herd animals, and it's one of the things that's kind of lacking a little bit in today's world. And so, I mean, it's one of the reasons I do this podcast. I love the conversation. I love the piece that you're going to give me, and maybe I'll give you a piece, and then we get to move forward. So what does it look like today? What is your spiritual life like today?
There aren't too many things that I do specifically for the spiritual practice of it. Well, but here's what it looks like today. Part of it is I, as best as I can, make sure that I'm reflecting on what I'm learning from my day or what I'm learning from my week. I want to see what worked. I want to see what didn't work. I want to see how I'm growing. I'm a coach by profession, and so I'm also helping people to see that, hey, there's the elephant. You're one of the blind men. There are plenty of other blind men. Don't antagonize them. Make friends. Get the pieces from each other. So I feel like that's kind of where God's working through me. I don't know. I mean, like maybe it's just kind of baked into my approach in life. Like what part of my work is I teach workshops on the art of confrontation. But in the art of confrontation, it's really the model of collaborative. It's really a collaborative model of how do we figure out what's going on. There's an elephant in the room. How do we collaboratively understand what's going on with the elephant so that we can agree, first of all, on what the elephant is, how we got here, and so what do we do about it? you know, so there's that. I meditate as often as I would like, no, you know, but but you know, it's one of the habits that I track with myself. You know, my wife is a constant source for me of being able to look into my blind spot, and I think that's where I get a lot of practice in, like, A, really understanding what I think is right, and then B, being able to let go of that, especially with a child like on the way. My wife's pregnant right now. You know, like, I have my idea of what a healthy lifestyle looks like, but then you throw pregnancy into the mix, and I don't know when we should be eating and what we should be eating anymore. But then there's like trying to figure that out, but then there's also like the compassion and just like there's like the head stuff, and then opening my heart to say, well, you know, but like, the hell do I know about being a pregnant woman, right? Like, help her out, you know?
Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of it comes out in, you know, like, I'm really not the kind of person, or I'm really not the kind of person that's afraid of saying something when I don't see eye to eye with someone, or when I see something that needs to be held accountable. Like, I'm able to have those part of my spiritual practice is having those conversations with people in a way that's equitable, in a way that's fair, in a way that's, you know, the collaborative truth building, giving the charitable assumptions so that we can collaboratively solve the problem. And I'm not just like beating people up over stuff the way that I once upon a time would have.
Yeah. So what I hear is that you used to be really confrontational, kind of like the game, like the confronting of people. That's what you talked about earlier, right? And now, having grown up, having come more to center, that as a centered person, it's not about the fight so much as it's about the conversation, and trying to be, you didn't use this word, but loving and open to another human being when when disagreements happen. Is that accurate?
Yeah, you know, I would be kind of confrontational. Like, I grew up, first of all, it's like, go confront and kick people's asses, because that's what I learned from my dad, right?
Yeah.
Like, go kick their ass. And then it's like, whoa, hold on, that's really not working, because I don't have any friends. So then, like, I'd hold everything in, and then, like, now it's just, it's a lot more, it's not even about the person anymore. Like, well, between me and the person, it's building relationship, it's building connection, right? It's building trust, you know. But then there's also the thing to solve, and then I don't let that go. We got to solve the problem, but now we're solving the problem together. And it's not coercion, it's not force, it's not manipulation either. And so it's connection, it's trust, you know. Yeah. So it kind of builds relationship.
I like that. You know, my spiritual life is about relationship to spirit for me, and relationship to others. And, you know, this idea for me of, like, I've always vaguely wanted to be the monk on the mountaintop, right? Just go sit somewhere and meditate in a cave. And that's slightly easier, right? Like, it's harder to be, you know what I mean? Like, to show up and pay your bills, and, like, you know, go drive. You live in LA, so go drive on the 10, and that's a hard. You got to be spiritual on the 10. That's a different ballgame. And instead, to, like, show up in your relationship, show up to the wife and the wedding, you know, the marriage and people. That's where I get to, like, be loving and kind, and really show my humanity and show up again.
Yeah.
So I'm feeling complete. Do you have anything else you would like to add? I really appreciate your time today.
On one hand, I feel like there's so much more. But I mean, so on one hand, I feel like there's so much more, but I mean, in this moment, I do feel pretty complete. You know, like, I feel compelled to talk about, or like, I feel like I want to talk about how, you know, it's like the training of this and like the seeking inside the self, and like there's all that too, but it's kind of like, I feel like that does pale in comparison. Like I feel like we really hit the high note with, for me, spirituality is a lot about relationship and kind of giving space to what I don't know without assuming the worst, and kind of like holding that space for possibility.
Yeah. I mean, I'm a coach too, and there's a kind of a seductive part of coaching where it feels like I'm supposed to always have an answer. I'm supposed to, but you know what I mean? And it's not the deal. And the deal is really to listen and to trust the other person. And it's not about me. And I do a lot of my coaching by checking in, of taking a breath when I feel my ego and I feel my desire to do something. I get involved, and then I just take a breath and just ask for guidance and ask for space, knowing that that person has their own guidance, right? And that's hard, right? It takes an enormous amount of effort and work to not get in there and like have me get involved in the other person. And we have knowledge and all of that stuff, and that's not to be discounted, but it is about holding that space and really being open to what the other person and being in that relationship in that moment for them. So I really appreciate this conversation with you. Thank you so, yeah. And I will put on the liner notes all of ways to get a hold of you. And so if anyone feels drawn to working with you, who do you work with? What kind of coaching do you do?
A lot of my clients are sales professionals or ex-sales professionals and now gone into management. Some of my clients are in leadership positions and executives. What I work with them on is how to hold people accountable and confront people on stuff.
Yeah.
And really leadership, you know, how do you influence people in a way that's spacious?
Yeah.
It's not manipulative, that's not coercive, that is straight, it's direct, it's kind of like not holding anything back, but builds trust along the way too. It kind of puts the cards on the table so you don't have to play the game with the cards this close to your chest. How do you trust? How do you lead people by trusting them? More.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's beautiful and hard.
I say that. Yeah. Yeah. You know, one thing that, and it's an adaptation from the Buddhist monk Thich Nhat Hanh. But one of the things that I say is that you must lead and you must sell in a way that the other person feels free. So.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, thanks so much for your time, and I really enjoyed our conversation.
Thank you, Leslie. Have a good day. Bye-bye now.